Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a Bowls Victoria training webinar. Tonight, we're going to unpack the new conditions of play for pennant. My name is Matt Tobre. I'm the Club Education and Training Manager, so I'll be your host. We're lucky to have an expert in the house tonight, John Roberts, Co-Chair of the Officiating and Launch Committee. John probably doesn't know this, but he'll be doing a lot of the heavy lifting and explaining various conditions. And also in the background, we've got our new events and competition manager, Troy Stafford. So it'll be nice to meet Troy. Troy will come on later in the session and fire a few questions that haven't been covered in tonight's slides. Just a reminder, if this is your first webinar, they're a little bit different to the Zoom meetings that we're very used to. As you can see from that first picture, it's a little bit like a cinema. You get to sit back and watch John do all the hard work. As I mentioned, though, you do have a Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So at times, if there's a question that you would like us to answer, please throw that in there, and Troy will man that and come back and discuss it later in the training. We are recording tonight's session, and we did record this morning's session. We'll have a look at which session we think was the better one. Generally, the second sessions tend to get uploaded. We've had a bit of a practice this morning and refined a few things. So that recording will definitely be put up on our website. There'll be a new tab when you click on pennant, and it should say training underneath, and we'll provide tonight's recording. And next week we're doing a side manager training, so recording for that one will be housed on the same page. The agenda for tonight, when we get John on very shortly, John will talk about the different roles the umpire, side manager and the controlling body have on the day, and how it's important that it's not the same person. We'll then unpack some of the big changes for this upcoming pennant season. Then we'll look at some commonly misunderstood conditions. I'm sure weather is going to get addressed there somewhere. Once we've gone through that, Troy Stafford will come on and fire some questions at John. And then we'll finish with how you can get support from Bowls Victoria. All right, I'll get John to come on now. John can put your video on and unmute yourself. Evening, John.
Good evening, Matt. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
All right, we'll get straight into it. Talk about the different roles.
Okay, welcome to everyone that's here tonight, and thank you for joining BV. So I think people are aware these days, but just to make sure that ideally the three roles of umpire, side manager and controlling body should be three separate people. So the reason being is that there may be, depending on the situation that's being managed, you may need to speak to the other person. For example, when there is rain falling and players are thinking they might want to come off, the side managers have to talk to one another and come to an agreement. If they can't come to an agreement, then they have to talk to the umpire, who makes the decision. So obviously, if I'm the umpire, I can't be the side manager. Otherwise, well, I could be, but otherwise I'd be talking to myself. So that's the situation. Now, the controlling body is an interesting one. Bowls Victoria is clearly the controlling body of all over the pennant. But on the day of play, it's the club at which the game is being played. Now, when I say the club, clearly a club can't be a controlling body. It needs to be a person. So someone at the home team, someone at the clubhouse needs to be nominated as the controlling body. So in a perfect world, it would be fantastic to turn up to a club and see written on the board where you're playing your rinks, where you're playing your games, who's the umpire or umpires of the day, and then nominate who the controlling body is. So the side managers, at least the side managers at home, need to know who they go to if it's a situation where they need to speak to the controlling body. So there are some times when the controlling body needs to be consulted. The classic one is substitutes. If a substitute's required in a game, it must be approved by the controlling body. So therefore, I would need to go as the umpire or as a side manager. I would need to go to whoever that person is and explain why I need to have a substitute, and explain who the substitute is and that they are affiliated with Bowls Victoria. And then I would give them the okay. So that's a classic example. The other one obviously is damage to the green. You need to talk to the controlling body, because the controlling body could close the green, or they could address the issue that's being brought to their attention via the umpire or the side managers. Okay.
Good stuff, John. Now we go into some of the changes for this year, even though I've got 23, 24. I apologise for that. And 24, 25, and Bob there too. Jeez,
that's okay.
Not doing well at all.
That's okay. So what's happened this year, Bowls Victoria has created a number of sections in their conditions of play. Section 1 now applies to all competitions right across the region and metropolitan pennant. So Section 1 is consistent right across the state, which is fantastic. So Section 2 is the part which regions. So Section 2 is set up for metropolitan pennant, and then the other regions, where they're allowed to, can make their own changes. So typically it might be in the area of qualification for finals. It might be in the area of, often in the area of what temperature needs to be reached before a game is interrupted or stopped. So at least there's now a consistent message right across. And I guess one of the classic ones is that teams should be selected on merit, and that you can't assign people to positions, e.g. skip, on gender. So it needs to be purely on merit. So now we've got a pennant permit. So for those people who understand, we have marquee players, and clubs can have up to 4 marquee players in their club for the season, so they can play at any level. And then the situation where a person belongs to 2 clubs, so they are dual members. They would have their primary club, which is the club at which they would play their club games, and then they would have their dual club, we would call their permit club. So, for example, someone is playing for, I'll say, Ferntree Gully, and they also want to play at another club in Melbourne. And so a club is allowed to have up to 4 permit players. The thing that's important is to understand that the player that has a permit can't play, for example, any events which go on to state level. They can't play at both clubs. In other words, you can't get two chances to get yourself into the singles championships. In regards to what I would call club events like 100 Up, what all those other interesting events that clubs might have, if the club wants their permit player to play and they want to play in both, they can, but not in any event which leads to state level. Now, the only other thing that can be confusing here is what happens when it comes to finals. So the you have to qualify for finals, and you need to then decide if it's at the pennant level. That's quite okay. You can qualify for finals at both your primary club and your permit club, but you cannot represent your you can't represent the permit club at state level pennant championships. So you can only, once again, you can only play with one club in regards to state level pennant championships. The thing that's important about permits is that both clubs obviously need to be informed and agree that they are happy for, so the primary club needs to agree that they're happy for Fred or Mary to also have a permit to play at another club. So what it really means is, say, for example, someone's playing Deer Park on Friday night. They could very well be playing in Shepparton on Saturday morning, Saturday. So that will happen a bit. Obviously, you can't play two games on the one day, but in a situation with pennant, it could be a Friday night game, and therefore you could play on a Saturday. I think we all know that you cannot play pennant on a Sunday unless it's arranged by Bowls Victoria. But if, for example, you're playing on a Friday night and it gets washed out, you can finish the game on the Saturday, but you can't finish the Saturday game on a Sunday, if that makes sense. So, okay.
Yep. Now we've had a lot of questions and emails about pennant permits. I think a lot more interest than I've seen before, John. And I think there'll be a lot of traffic between regional and metro here, which will be great.
Possibly, yep.
All right. Moving on to rink draws.
Interesting. This is so you would all now be familiar with BowlsLink, and that's taken a number of years to get into action, and people are starting to realise what a great value BowlsLink is to pennant, but also to clubs who can organise their own events using BowlsLink. So what BowlsLink, the organisation, has now put in place on BowlsLink is something which is called a shuffle button. So the home side manager would push the button. So at this stage, Premier, Premier Reserve and Division 1 will be using the BowlsLink shuffle button. So once the teams are established on BowlsLink, then obviously when the home side manager is sitting there with the away side manager, they push the button and the bells and whistles all go off, and the computer randomly selects the rinks. So once that's done, that's it. You cannot undo it. You cannot change it. So it really just takes out, dare I say, the clubs that may have tried to manipulate that so-and-so should always play on rink 3 at home. So the shuffle button will be used by Premier, Premier Reserve and Division 1. I'm not sure what Bowls Victoria's position is regarding other divisions, whether it's optional. So I'll leave that to Troy to say something about that at the end. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons for Prem Reserve and Div 1 using that button, John, is obviously they're going to be live scoring as well, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yep.
That will definitely help the rinks to be matched up, so the match can be scored straight away.
Yeah, it's quite it's a great innovation.
It won't quite look like a pokies machine and have them spinning, but it will definitely randomly.
But the lights will change colour and flick in the clubhouse, won't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
That leads quite nicely into the next one, which is the allocation of rinks.
Okay, so rinks have to be consecutively numbered. That's fairly obvious. And look, really all that means is the greenkeeper puts the numbers in consecutively. So that should never be a problem. It's just a matter of moving the numbers so they're consecutively numbered. A side will play in consecutively numbered rinks and preferably on the same green. We understand that sometimes, particularly if you've got a full house, then one or two of the teams, of the teams within the side have to play on two different rinks. It's not ideal, but preferably should be on the same green if it's possible. Otherwise, they can be split. Where the shuffle buttons used, clearly the teams have to play on the allocated rinks. So that's fairly obvious.
And what BowlsLink will show is it'll do a random shuffle, and it'll have one rink playing another as team 1, teams 2s, teams 3s, and teams 4s. So It's really important here that for the example that we've listed here, they're going to use rinks 4 to 7. Team 1s will be playing on 4. The members who get put into team 2, so team 2 versus team 2 will be playing on 5, 6, and 7 for 3 and 4.
Okay. Next.
All right. We're moving into inclement weather.
Inclement weather. My favourite topic. Okay. So obviously you need to know what the temperature is when you need to stop playing. I just want to reiterate at that particular time, for Metro, it's 36 degrees. When it gets to 36 degrees, you must stop playing. It doesn't matter if it's Premier Division and they're all under 30 and they think they're all right, they can still play. This is based on health and safety. This is based on looking after people. So once it gets to 36 in Metro and in some regional areas as well, you stop. How do you work out what's the temperature at your club? You go to the BOM app, the official BOM app on your mobile phone, and you enter the postcode of the address of the club. Okay. And then the app will then default to the nearest weather station. So there are some anomalies around Metro Melbourne, but this we've trialed it out, and we used to have a list, but we've completed a whole lot of trials, and this is a very accurate way of getting the correct BOM station for where you're at. Now, lightning. So we've added something to here because, for example, in flat areas, rural, or even in Melbourne, you can see lightning from a long way away. So it made it a bit more difficult to sell. I just saw lightning, we've got to stop. Okay, so what needs to happen now, when there is lightning, you need to go inside in an enclosed building, and you must stay there until 30 minutes after the last sight of lightning. So what happens is you need to see the lightning, and then you count when the thunder is heard. If it's less than 30 seconds, you need to suspend play immediately. Okay, it's the one time when everyone just needs to get off. Now, just a reminder, there are very few what we would call indoor facilities which are completely indoor. So there's the couple that come to my mind is Traralgon, Brighton.
Brighton. Yep.
They are fully secured, so therefore they can remain playing while there's lightning going on outside. But if I use the club of, say, for example, Sunbury, which is fairly well covered in, but it is open on a couple of sides, you must treat it the same as you do if it's an outdoor green. I was doing an umpire seminar on Sunday in Moe, and one of the umpires asked me a good question and said, "Oh, what about sheet lightning? Because there's no thunder." So I said to them, I will investigate this, because I thought, oh, this is quite interesting. Anyway, I did a lot of investigating, and what I discovered is that sheet lightning does have thunder, but it's so high up in the clouds or above the clouds, you never hear it. And sheet lightning does not hit the ground. So no one has been struck with sheet lightning. So if it is sheet lightning, and you can establish that because you see lightning, but there's no thunder, you can continue to play. Okay.
So obviously, with that first part, it's going to be important that the side managers get together and then gauge the time between lightning and the thunder.
Through anything to do with inclement weather or people coming off the green or any of those sort of decision making, it is really important that the two side managers get together ASAP and come up with a decision. One of the difficulties is that you often have 3 or 4, could be skips, often is, or other players saying, oh, we don't want to play here, it's too dangerous, too wet, too whatever. And then there's grumbling. It's completely the side manager's decision. They need to make it quickly. They need to keep records of time when it stops and when it returns. And if they can't make a decision, they need to get onto the umpire ASAP. I've seen situations where there's just too much time wasted between the people in charge actually getting together and doing their job efficiently. So, and it's frustrating for players as well because they want to know what's going on. So I just ask that side managers and umpires work together as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah. So obviously with that one, recording the time that they've come off, obviously the gap between the lightning and the thunder is less than 30 seconds, and then they're not going back on until 30 minutes after the last side of lightning.
Correct.
All right. This one is just related to Metro, and it's about division finals.
Yep.
So there'll be no Metro
you can talk
division.
about this.
Yeah. So I picked this up when I was reading through the COP. It stood out when I came to Metro and the weekend and the midweek part. So there'll be no Metro division finals. That's the winners of all the sections for the following divisions. So for weekend, divisions 6, 7, and 8, they'll just play it out in their sections, and there'll be no division final. And for midweek, it'll be divisions 4, 5, 6, 6-a-side, and it's also that 7-a-side comp that's on the Thursday that's classified as midweek. There'll be no divisional finals.
The only comment I'd like to make here, Matt, is that when this was put in the draft conditions of play and sent out to clubs for comment, there were very few clubs that commented on this decision. There were a handful of clubs that were opposed to this notion, but overall, it appeared to be acceptable. So, yep.
All right. Now we move into our finals, the eligibility to play finals. And we're starting to move now into our misunderstood conditions. All right. So obviously here it says at the start, players must have played 4 or more games in the side concerned or lower graded sides.
Yep. So
in each competition, obviously a side must not include any player who during the season has played 4 or more games in a high graded side, unless the player has played 4 or more games in the side concerned or lower graded sides combined. I've got a couple examples there for you, John.
Yeah, you have. So player A, 3 in Premier and 7 in Division 1. So clearly they qualify for Division 1 because they've played more than 4, and they qualify to play in Premier because it's a higher grade. Okay. Player B.
Yep.
Clearly they've qualified to play Division 2, and they can play in Premier R. They can't play in the other division. What's Division 2, 3?
So I've deliberately put 2 Division 2s in there because Heathmont has this example. We've got 2 Division 2 sides, but as you can see, one of our sides will be recorded as number 2, and one side will be recorded as number 3, and obviously the Prem Reserve will be the number 1 side.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep. So
Yep.
they
So this
play
particular
in Division
player
2 and Premier R. They can't play because they've qualified for Division 2. They haven't qualified for Division 2-3. Okay.
because they haven't played the 4, have they?
Haven't
In
played
the
the 4
lower
games.
one.
Player
Yep.
C. So they're qualified for Division 2. So therefore they can't play below Division 2. And they can play for Division 1 because it's a higher side than the division that they're qualified for.
Now,
Player
D. Interesting one.
Player D, Division 3. They've played 8 games. So therefore, they can't play in any other division except above, obviously play in Division 3 and above Division 3 if the club had higher divisions.
So they can't play in Div 4, John?
No.
Even though they've played 2 lower and then they've played the 3 in Div 4, that doesn't give them the 4 or more games in the side concerned or lower graded sides?
It's got to be in, they've got to play 4 or more games in that division. If they had played 4 in Division 4, they could play in Division 4.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Cool. Next.
All right. This is interchanging of players between sides prior to finals, Metro only.
Yeah. So no side will include more than 2 players that have played the majority of their games in any combination of higher grades. All right. So, so what's that?
Now that table relates to the next one, which is incomplete team at commencement of a game.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
If 30 minutes, one player is absent from one or more teams in a side game, must continue in accordance with, yep. So the classic one is where it doesn't happen so much these days, but it used to happen that the side, the team would come together in one car. All right, so you've got 4. So therefore, everyone's there waiting, and the car load, so a whole team, doesn't front up, and they find out that they've had a car breakdown, and they hope to get there, but they aren't there, and the 30 minutes is gone. So to start the game, you need to shuffle the other 3 teams. You would take 1 out of each team and make up the 4th team. Okay, then when the players arrive, they need to be fitted back into the side. So I always get confused.
How would they be figured back in?
Huh?
Well, Bob mentioned this morning that they would have to continue. They'd just take the place of the 2s. Would that?
Yes. So the people that have been moved, they have to take their place, and
Yep.
they can't. And you can't. They wouldn't be able to. Well, in the situation I talked about, it's all 4 players. So the 4 of them would have to be fitted into. You have to re-establish the 4 rinks. But if you, in this case, you've just got 2 players missing. Those 2 players turn up. They would need to go into the teams which only had 3 players.
Yep.
Well, now it doesn't matter how long they're away. If it was away for an hour or more, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. And the big one is that you do, once it hits 1 o'clock for most clubs, they're playing their pennant on a weekend, Saturday.
Yeah.
They do have 30 minutes that they can wait for these players to arrive.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And if they got impatient and said, "Oh, they'll probably turn up, we'll start," and it goes past 30 minutes, then they've lost the game because you can't play pennant with 3 teams. So you really just need to be patient and wait, obviously, to make sure the players are okay, and then wait. If for some reason the players weren't going to turn up, for whatever reason, then you could use substitutes, but you need to get permission off the controlling body to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hope this doesn't happen, but really good points, and clubs need to be aware of what happens and how much time they do have, and they can wait. And obviously, if you do turn up late, you're going to lose that roll up, and you'll be going straight into play.
Yep, correct.
All right.
Okay.
Couple more straightforward ones. So one of playing music.
A lot of clubs play music, and if someone from team B doesn't thinks the music's too loud, then they can ask for the music to be turned down. If that doesn't get a nice response, well, then the side manager would need to discuss this. If the side managers can't agree, so the home side manager says, no, we're not turning it down. It's all right. We have the same thing every week and no one complains. If the side managers can't agree, then the umpire of the day will make a final decision. So it's the poor old umpires to make the decision. Of course, music that's inappropriate, so with language or anything that's obviously to the ordinary person in the street is offensive, is not acceptable. I don't think I'd ever expect to hear it, but just to make sure that you can't have music playing that would be offensive in that regards to people. You can't talk about being offended because you don't like country and western, and Yarra Valley play country and western all the time. So it's just a matter of trying to. I mean, what's interesting, I've been skipping in one end and on the end green, and the speaker is right at that end. It's not in the middle of the green. So it might be all right for 4 rinks away, but for me, it's incredibly loud. And I've actually asked, can you just turn that down a bit? Which received quite okay. Because sometimes they don't realise how loud it is and bring it to their attention. Good old pre-game pennant practice. So this is our 3rd season doing this. So we're getting better and better at it all the time. So what is it? Everyone, home team and visiting side, will have access for an hour. That is 90 minutes before the game is scheduled to start. Okay, so if I do the classic Saturday pennant starts at 1 o'clock. So half an hour before the game starts, there's no one on the green because the side managers are in there doing the cards, and in some divisions pushing the button. So you can, that's the situation. Now, what's important to understand is if you're at a club and the greenkeeper's given the okay and it's more than an hour, so long as it's accessible to both home team and visiting team, there is nothing that says you can't practice for longer than an hour. But it has to make sure that it's available to both clubs. But what is guaranteed is an hour practice is allocated, and you practice on the rinks that you will be playing on.
So obviously for 16 a side, you're going to have 2 rinks each.
Yep.
In midweek, we have quite a few 12 a side, so they'll have to have 1 rink each and then share the middle.
Yeah, or sometimes on Tuesday pennant, there's often rinks available nearby, and they just split up onto the other rink. It's just common sense and use. It's the same as say you're the home team and the hours and you're now able to practice, and the opposition hasn't turned up, and there's nothing wrong with you spreading out over 4 rinks, but it's so long as when your opposition turns up, you just move back to 2 rinks and make sure they have the availability of the 2 rinks. So once again, it's just common courtesy and common sense.
Yeah, and as you said, we're coming into our 3rd season of this, and I think it's been really well received.
It's been, and yep, cool. Okay, so this is what constitutes a game. So I don't need to go through each one. If people can read, and it's recorded in the conditions of play. Probably I want to relate it to wet weather. So if I won't go into the difference between a stoppage and an interruption to play, but if the game is stopped, that means that it's been people haven't been able to play for more than after 10 minutes, becomes a stoppage. So in a stoppage, then you go back on the green when it's safe, whether it's temperature or rain or whatever, you go back on. Once a stoppage occurs, pennant must finish within 5 hours. So if it starts at 1 o'clock, if there's a stoppage of play, the game must cease at 6 o'clock. Under normal situation, if for some reason it'd have to be very, 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 very slow, you hadn't finished, it was a normal game, no interruption, no stoppages of play, no stoppages of play. You continue to play until the game is ended. You play your full amount of ends. So it could go past 6 o'clock. Highly unlikely, but it could. But it's when, so the point I'm making is, if there's a stoppage of play and the game ends at 6 o'clock, then the game, so you haven't completed all of your ends. 60 ends have to have been completed for it to be a game awarded. Otherwise, the game would be abandoned. Okay.
And just as we mentioned this morning, obviously with 16 players, you've got 4 rinks. It doesn't have to be 15 ends each.
Nope.
Those 4 rinks.
No, it does not, because we all
know. So you can have one rink that's way ahead.
Some rinks are notoriously slow and other rinks that's notoriously fast. So it's just a total of 60 ends. It doesn't need to be, as you say, 15, 15, 15, 15. Yep. Okay.
The next slide, John, is going to talk about stoppage and interruptions, and we've got 4 scenarios for you.
Cool. All right. Beautiful. All right. I like this way this has been set up. So where did the 10 minutes come from? Because that's the thing that people often think about. The 10 minutes come from the laws of the sport that says that no person can leave the rink of play for more than 10 minutes. So, and anyone wants to leave the green, they should ask their opponent for permission. If I'll come back to that. So if I just used rain or dust storm or something like that, or heat, as an interruption to play, people come off for whatever the reason is. Once it gets past 10 minutes, it becomes a stoppage. But the difference between the two is, if it's an interruption of play, that is from 0 to up to 10 minutes, and you're back on the green, the heads remain as they are and you complete the ends. If it's a stoppage, that means you've now stopped play for more than 10 minutes. It's a dead end and you need to replay the end. Okay. So if the stoppage, for whatever reason, goes beyond an hour, then the game is abandoned and the points are shared. Now, it's not accumulative. So it's not like we stop for 15 minutes, then we stop for 15 minutes, that's now 30 minutes. It's not accumulative. It's about, at the one particular stoppage, if it goes for more than an hour, then the game is abandoned. So who makes the decision? The side managers have to agree. If the side managers don't agree, they go to the umpire and the umpire makes a decision. Where we see some, probably the more complicated situations is rain, because it can be, well, it is in some way, can be in some ways subjective as to what you believe is okay to play in. So the next, for those people who know Lawman, the next Lawman is about how weather impacts on our sport. And one of the things that I mentioned in the article is that my first point is, it is okay to play bowls in the rain. Okay, so some people think if it rains, you don't play bowls. It is okay to play bowls in the rain. The problem is if it becomes unsafe to play bowls in the rain, and that's usually about the indications that I've put on it describe is if water's pooling on the greens, you shouldn't be playing bowls. If it's very slippery, either on the green or off the green. So some clubs, it's actually quite slippery off the green. So people are standing up on the bank. It can be dangerous. I also remind people that it is okay to turn the mat over. It is okay to put your rag on the mat. So you can do stuff to try and manage if it's a bit slippery. But if it is dangerous, then sure, you have an interruption to, well, probably necessarily be stoppage. So the greenkeeper or the controlling body can stop a match. So the greenkeeper or their appointee can come and say, "Nah, you're damaging the green. The game is over. That's it. That's the end of the game." Now that has caused some issues because people have alleged that the home club is, if you like, geared up the greenkeeper to call the game off. It's a very difficult one to deal with, but you just work on the premise that most people in most clubs are honest. So have I covered everything there?
Yeah, I think you've done a great job. I think that the key takeouts from this is we can play in rain, and some people come off way too quickly.
Yep.
Also, we need to play the game in the spirit, and we want to play the game for a result. So we don't want to deliberately try and abandon the game to get an advantage.
Yeah.
That's definitely going against the spirit of the sport. Yeah. And obviously, safety is the big one. So last year, I think last year was the one game I played through the most rain I've ever experienced. At no time did the side managers get together to decide whether they needed to make a call. So the umpire wasn't needed. It rained, but it wasn't torrential. It was just consistent, and we just put our wet weather gear on and played the whole game, and the green never pulled, so it never became unsafe.
I just want to remind people that, as I said, people should ask if they need to leave the green, because there can be times when a legitimate reason someone needs to nick into the bathroom. If the player, the opposition player, so the player's asked to go to the bathroom 3 times. So the player has the right to call the umpire and say, "I don't think this is fair. They've gone into the bathroom 3 times." The umpire then would have a private discussion with the person, because they could actually be unwell, and then determine whether it is okay for that person to leave. So that's an interesting one that's happened before. And I will say that I would never give permission for my opponent to leave to have a cigarette.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's funny you talk about it, because the next slide does talk about smoking. But firstly, we're going to have a look at instantaneous penalties, John.
Okay, cool. All right. So there are, obviously, there are 60 laws of the sport. You can't contract out any of the laws of the sport. So there, unfortunately, there's situations, there was some behaviours of players that weren't covered by the laws of the sport. So they were things around inappropriate language. What else was there? Physicality, homophobia, just offensive behaviours, and the umpire on an observation or appeal from a player or a coach, they can award as many shots as there are in the use of by the opponents. So if it's a classic pennant, it's 8 shots. Now, we train our umpires to be authoritative, not authoritarian. So for example, if the worst case scenario is someone punches another player and it's observed and it's seen, you wouldn't give that player a warning and say, "Look, please don't punch them again." They would be immediately awarded 8 shots, and they would be asked to leave the game. Okay, but if in the frustrating part of the game, someone lets fly over one word which is offensive, that would not be appropriate. You just give them a warning and say, hey, but what's your language? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, and you understand. So you've got to use common sense. Smoking is an interesting one. You must abide by what the club allows where you're playing. Some clubs, and I don't think it's a bad thing, only allow smoking outside the perimeter of their clubhouse, of the actual boundaries. So you just need to be respectful of what each club sets up in regards to smoking. So you can only smoke in designated areas. I've seen players walk on the green with a cigarette, and now we're talking about vapes as well as e-cigarettes, as well as cigarettes, cigars, pipes, all those things. And they've just forgotten, in terms of their habits, they've just forgotten. They've walked onto the green with a cigarette. And if you just remind them, 9 times out of 10, they go, oh, sorry, I forgot. And that they get rid of the cigarette or whatever. But if they continue to do it, instantaneous penalty, 8 shots. So I've actually done that, and it was a while ago. The player was vaping on the game before. It was I forget it. I think it was Vic Open. Was vaping on the game before and was warned by the umpire, you cannot do that. I was aware of that. I spoke to the player before the game and said, I'm aware that you've been warned about smoking. So please don't do it. Otherwise you'll lose 8 shots. So what happens is that they hide behind the shed and they vape. And of course, as you know, vaping creates a massive amount of smoke. So without hesitation, I went up to him and awarded the opposition 8 shots. So that's as far as I'll go into that story. Okay.
All right, next one's about electronic devices.
Yep.
So obviously there's an exemption for, obviously we're going to have live scoring in Prem Reserve and Div 1.
Yep.
So phones will be fine because they're connected to a scoreboard.
Yep.
Obviously, you're also going to have some people with emergency procedures. They might have someone who's not well in their family. Quite fine for them to have a phone on them, John.
Yep. So this is a reminder that apart from the laws of the sport, our games of pennant are also must follow the policies of Bowls Australia. So there is a electronic devices policy for Bowls Australia, which says things like you can't use a mobile phone on during the game unless it's to do with scoring, or it's a personal emergency, or you may be a member of the SES or other emergency services. And in that case, you need to have your phone in your pocket, wherever, on silent and vibrating, and you need to inform the umpire that you're doing that. Now, the other things which are electronic devices and acceptable are things like hearing aids, and also there are now devices which indicate people's sugar levels. So anything medical or anything like that, they would not be disadvantaged by saying, no, you can't take that on there because it's an electronic device. So the world is changing. For my first time ever at BBL, I was live scoring. So I had the phone in my hand, and then I had a thing around my neck to work the electronic scoreboard. So I had to rearrange my processes in my head to get it all done. And then when a player left the mat, the back, I used to curse internally because that was something else I had to do. So the world has changed around, and we need to move forward, and we are. Eventually electronic scorecards will slowly move down through the divisions. Whether it gets to the bottom 2 divisions, I have no idea, but that's where we're heading.
And we do have quite a few regions this year trialing live scoring in their top division, which is fantastic as well.
It is really excellent. So the other thing is, though, if we're keeping paper scorecards, the clubs need to keep them for the season, because sometimes we need to refer to them if there is some sort of complaint, or needs to be an investigation. So we ask the clubs that are keeping scorecards, who use scorecards, to please keep them for the season. Yep.
All right, last slide, John.
Okay.
We've got 2 to go, and then we'll bring Troy on.
Yeah. Okay. Slow play is an interesting one. So if the umpire believes, or the side manager decides a play, they bring it to the umpire's attention, then the umpire needs to observe and delay and instruct the players to move on. A classic one, and I've seen it a number of times, where it's nearly over, the game's nearly over, it's very close, and one rink decides they will stop and wait till the second last ending rink finishes, then they'll complete their end. That is not acceptable. The umpire would tell the rink that's waiting, get on with your game. Okay, so because it's just not acceptable. You just need to keep playing at a normal rate. There's some subjectivity in it, but not. Some clubs, some teams, particularly in high levels, will do all sorts of clever things to delay play if they think it may be advantageous to the final decision. But if the umpire observed, or there's an appeal, then they will be told to play. If the player says, no, I'm not going to play, the next thing would be, well, if you don't, you're becoming a defaulting player, which would mean you would forfeit the game. So I've never got to that stage, but that's what the umpires are instructed to do if it got that far. I'm sure the player would then deliver their bowl.
Well said.
Okay, bowler's arms.
Last one's bowler's arm.
Bowler's arms. There are a significant number of people that play with bowling arms in right across Australia, and Victoria has a number of them. They're great because they enable a whole lot of people to stay in our great game. So it's easy with terms of bowling arms. So once you pick up the bowling arm, you must continue to use it. So Mary Lou might be play half the game. For whatever reason, she becomes fatigued. She can then pick up the bowling arm, and then you must use it for the rest of the game. You can't decide one end I'll use it, another end I won't. Once you pick up the bowling arm, you must continue with it. You cannot just use the bowling arm to deliver the jack, because that's happened recently. So you don't have to deliver the jack with a bowling arm if you're using a bowling arm, but you can't only deliver the jack. So if the bowling arm breaks down.
Yeah, good question.
So you should technically replace the bowling arm with the same manufactured bowling arm. That sometimes is simply not practical. We want people to continue to play games, so they would need to use a bowling arm. Someone said, oh, what happens if there's none there? Then you would need, it's quite okay to share a bowling arm. But the bottom line would be is that there was no bowling arm to share, and there was no bowling arms available, then, and they're already using the bowling arm, unfortunately they would have to forfeit. But that's highly unlikely to happen, because there are a significant number of bowling arms around these days. And I know that a lot of clubs, through a number of ways, have a collection of bowling arms behind the bar somewhere. So that's the situation with bowling arms.
All right, you've done a great job, John. I'll bring on Troy now. We'll stop sharing, and we'll have a look at some of the questions. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on this evening.
No problem. How'd you go with the questions?
Yeah, so a few things. We'll just go sort of through them sequentially. First one regarding the shuffle button. It is certainly something that is optional for those sides below Division 1 or any sides in rural areas. the likelihood that they're going to use it at this stage is probably low. But if there are sides that want to do it, they would just need to negotiate with their opposition that they're happy to trial the shuffle button. But essentially, we're looking for Premier Division, Prem Reserve, and Division 1 to all be using that. And I've sent emails out to all the Division 1 clubs to trial the shuffle button and trial live scoring because it's new for Division 1 this year. Question for you, John, which was just regarding the heat rule.
Yes.
If it does reach that temperature, do you stop immediately or do you finish the end and then stop?
No, you stop.
Stop immediately.
Yeah. If you can, I would endeavour to try and finish the end if it's close, but technically you should stop because it's reached the temperature we've decided it is not safe or healthy to continue to play.
Yep. Okay.
Obviously, with lightning, you stop.
Yeah, stop immediately. But with the temperature, if you can just finish that end, finish the end.
Temperature, you should stop. Really, you should stop. The rain is a bit different because you can sort of finish off in the rain unless it's bucketing down. And so we try to get the end finished, but probably as a rule of thumb, you probably should save for temperature. Once it gets 36, that's it. You stop. And then wait and see whether it's an interruption to play or a stoppage. Okay?
Yeah. Yep. There was another question that I was typing an answer, and I think people might have only got half an answer for me because my webinar cut out partway through it. So I don't know if they got half an answer or no answer. But the question was to do with if they went off at 36 degrees, came back on because it dropped to 35.8, is this the correct way to handle this situation? And I was starting to type the fact that yes, this is how it would be done, and then the side managers would just continue to monitor the temperature to see if it does go back up to 36. Now that's obviously in metropolitan, whereas some of our rural areas have higher or lower temperatures. So whatever your temperature is, the same rule applies, just based on a different number.
So what's interesting, and I've seen it everywhere, is that it's not just the side managers that have their phones rating. A number of people do, and they drive you nuts. They'll say to the side managers, "Oh, it's 37.8, it's 37.9." I just wish players would let the people with the roles do their jobs and let them make the decision. They don't need to be told that the temperature's going up by a point of a degree every 5 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So the next one now, Matt, are you able to go back to any of our slides?
Yeah, definitely.
So there was a question regarding qualification for finals. So if you could go back to that one.
Oh God, let me go.
Is it the one with the player A, B, and C?
That's the one.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in player D, John, if you could just go back over that example for people.
So this is,
Player D.
I've got to be careful here because clearly they can play Division 3 and above. All right, that's clear. So I think what Matt was intimating is that because they've played 2 in 7 and 3 in 4, that means they've played 5 games.
5. So
games.
Would it be a tick for Div 4 and Div 3?
Okay. Well, see, the person that played 2 games in Div 7, sorry, the person played 2 games in Div 7. If that's all they played, they couldn't play finals at all anywhere because they haven't played 4 games. So,
no, but this is the same player. So
this is the same player, player D.
8 games in Division 3, 3 in Division 4, and 2 in Division 7.
Okay, so they played. Well, they did.
The way I read this, where it says a side must not include any player who during the current season has played 4 or more games in a higher graded side, unless the player has played 4 or more games in the side concerned, means they're not qualified for Division 4 because they've only played 3 games there.
Yeah, I agree.
What about the lower graded sides combined?
Well, that rule basically says no because they haven't played it in that specific side. They haven't played the 4 games there.
So you can't say they've played 5 games in a combination of Division 4 and 7, so therefore they can play in any division above 4. You can't say that because exactly what Troy said, they've only played specifically 3 games in Division 4 and 2 games in Division 7. So they can play in Division 3 and above, that's all.
Yeah.
That's the way I read it.
Yep. Yep. Next one was if there was an hour suspension, or we've got to time the hour suspension due to, let's say, rain, and then after the hour, an hour's up, we don't go back on the green.
Yep.
If there was the half-hour lunch break in there, does that count as part of the hour, or is it an hour plus the 30-minute lunch break?
It's an hour plus.
So yeah.
But see, this is where it's really important for the side managers and the umpires to talk, because I've been in situations where common sense has been used and they've either felt that it's going to rain heavily soon, or it's raining and it's probably going to get heavier, and they decide to stop for lunch early. Now, that's not a stoppage. You're stopping for lunch. You've got 30 minutes. So the answer to your question is no, lunch is not included as part of the stoppage.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Next one was, can you always allocate someone an end rink if they're in a wheelchair?
No. So the classic is, say they're using the shuffle button, you've got to allocate the rinks according to where they are, wherever the button, the computer says they should play. It's not uncommon where the greenkeeper would prefer the person on the wheelchair to use the end rink. The bottom line is, if they're not damaging the green, they're entitled to play wherever they like. If they are damaging the green, if any player is damaging the green in any way, whether it's a wheelchair, any way, with their feet, with their shoes, they can be asked to change if they can. If they can't stop damaging the green, they have to come out of the game. So definitely not. It's not appropriate. You could be hit with anti-discrimination bill, really. So no, you can't. I understand why they want to do it, but no, you can't. And the thing is that so long as the wheelchair's got a wide circle to turn in, they're usually pretty good. But it's just a matter of no, you can't. If they're damaging the green, then they need to stop playing.
Thank you. Just a couple more. If there's no bowling arm available and the player has to stop playing, can a substitute player be brought in?
No.
Okay. And just finally, just on that temperature one, someone saying we need clarification. If it's 36 degrees, do we stop immediately or do we finish the end?
You do stop immediately. Yes.
Stop immediately.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think that's all of them, Matty.
Excellent. All right, I'll just go to our last slide, which just lists support at BV. So obviously you've got Troy's details there. You've got Sam Rogers, who has done a lot of great work with you, John, hasn't he, in writing this year's COP. There's my details, and obviously there's John and Bob's details as well. So if you have any further questions and you want to reach out and get some clarification, feel free to do that, and obviously share the recording from tonight. All right. Just a big thank you to you, John, for giving up your time and all the meetings you've had to put the COP together. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from tonight's training. I've definitely learned a couple of things each year I do. So thank you for your time.
Cool. I learned stuff too.
We always got to learn, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the big things I pulled out of tonight's session is probably how important side managers are. So bit of
Very
a plug for next week. On the 8th of October, which is another Tuesday, we'll be doing a side manager training. We'll unpack again some of those COPs. We'll look at how BowlsLink works, and again we'll open up some questions to the public. So thank you again for tonight.
Can I just say about side managers, in my experience in Bowls Club, is that some people do the job extremely well. In fact, most people do, and they end up being the side manager forever. And I really encourage clubs to have mentors with training other people to be side managers so that they can get a chance to do it. Because in some clubs, there are people that want to be side manager, but it's always the same side manager, so they never get a chance. So I'd like clubs to think about the training the side managers and how you train up the people in your club who are interested in being side managers.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Troy, manning the questions.
All
excellent.
Good.
All right. We'll see you again next Tuesday. And again, a reminder that tonight's session has been recorded and will be uploaded to our website for future viewing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.